You are approached by a man who identifies himself as Agent Graves. He gives you a briefcase. Inside is a gun, 100 bullets, and irrefutable evidence that someone ruined your life. Graves doesn't advise you what to do with this information or the contents of the briefcase, but he does state that if you do take action, including lethal action, there will be no repercussions whatsoever. What will you do? This is the premise that begins 100 Bullets. It's cynical wish fulfillment with a premise that asks, if one is given permission to exist outside the law and one's own morality, can one justify the most extreme response possible? With that said, 100 Bullets is not an ongoing series about various people being given the opportunity to commit murder. It's about a conspiracy within a conspiracy. The briefcase and its contents are part of this overall plot, but it's merely the entry point concept to a much larger story about power and corruption. In some ways, it's a commentary about the violent foundation underlying one of the most powerful countries in the world, the United States of America. The story of 100 Bullets begins in the 15th century. The heads of 13 powerful families decide to join together and form an alliance known as the Trust. Together, they approach the rulers of Europe and attempt to strike a compelling deal. The Trust will leave Europe, also leaving behind their fortunes and influence, and discontinue meddling in the affairs of the ruling class. In exchange for this magnanimous gesture, they want the recently discovered New World. The Trust wants America to shape to their own needs. Naturally, this offer is rejected. As if in response to this outlandish deal, Queen Elizabeth I, the ruler of the British Empire, establishes the Roanoke colony in the New World. The Trust assemble the Minutemen, a group of 7 murderous individuals, and send them to reclaim that territory. Everyone living in Roanoke is slaughtered. Carved into a post was one seemingly meaningless word, Croatoa. This was a message to the rulers of Europe. It roughly translates as, "This land is ours." From that point forward, America was effectively owned by the Trust. This claim to America is known as the Great Crime, or the greatest crime in history. Historically speaking, the Roanoke colony was a real colony that did disappear under mysterious circumstances, and the word Croatoan was the only clue left behind to mark its passing. Whether the population was slaughtered or assimilated by an indigenous community is unknown. They may have simply moved to another, more hospitable location. It's a deep historical mystery without any resolution. Metaphorically, the great crime seems to be depicted in the painting The Death of Caesar. Of course, the style of dress seems very 15th century, implying this is a recreation of the moment when the Trust formed and consolidated their power. After all, Caesar is known to have been killed in 44 BC, so clearly this isn't actually depicting the death of that Roman emperor. Historically, the murder of Caesar led to the transformation of the Roman Republic into an empire. Applying that to the United States, which has been referred to as a modern empire, it could mean the Trust, metaphorically, killed the American dream. The freedom the country is intended to represent is a lie. It's a dream that's actually based on corruption and power. Only a certain select group enjoy wealth and prosperity, while everyone else struggles, believing they too can share in this dream. Regardless, this painting is symbolically important to the Trust. It represents an act that was as severe as killing an emperor. Therefore, this painting and its significance may be a common trope of crime movies, the MacGuffin. The classic definition of a MacGuffin is an object, device, or event that is necessary to the plot and the motivation of the characters, but insignificant, unimportant, or irrelevant in itself. Or to quote the originator of the term, film director Alfred Hitchcock, the MacGuffin is the thing that the spies are after, but the audience don't care about. A classic example of this is the Maltese Falcon in the film of the same name. A more modern interpretation is a thing the audience doesn't care about, but becomes important to the plot. The Death Star plans, R2-D2 carries in Star Wars being an example. An example that straddles the line between these two definitions is the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. It is both vital to the plot, and its mysterious contents matter to the audience, although one never discovers what the briefcase contains. At a glance, the briefcase Agent Graves hands out appears to meet this specific criteria, but it's more of a narrative bait and switch. As one learns through the series, the briefcase is used to activate sleeper agents or to test the viability of potential agents. In one instance, early in the series, it's used to deliver a message to the Trust, announcing that Graves is still alive and preparing to finalize the conspiracy that was put into motion many years ago. Within 100 Bullets, this painting is chased after and handed around by quite a few characters. Ultimately, it's used to wrap up a dead body that's then dumped into a swamp. So, due to its final fate and irrelevance to the plot, it fulfills the classic definition of a MacGuffin. Atlantic City is the next pivotal event in the 100 Bullets saga. The Minutemen were ordered by the Trust to repeat the greatest crime in history and claim another territory for them. It's never specified which country was the target. The leader of the Minutemen, Agent Graves, denies this command. In retaliation for refusing a direct order, the Trust decide to dissolve and eliminate the Minutemen. These enforcers have outlived their usefulness, and the moderating power they hold over the Trust has become inconvenient. However, Graves anticipated this deadly response and prepared a response of his own. All of the Minutemen, with the exception of one, abduct and murder a member of the Trust in Atlantic City. This was a warning to the surviving members of the Trust. In case there was any doubt, we will reach you before you can reach us. After this murder, Graves deactivated the Minutemen, giving them fake, anonymous lives to live. He also implanted a keyword in their mind to reactivate them when it became necessary to put them into service. Then Graves disappeared. All of the aforementioned events take place before the first issue of 100 Bullets. Bits and pieces are sprinkled through the course of the series, with the actual conspiracy underlying the story not being revealed until the final issues. The original conspiracy is a criminal empire that secretly controls and influences America itself. The Trust is made up of 13 wealthy and powerful families. While they secretly control America, they don't work in the shadows. This is because collectively they are untouchable. However, individually, they are held accountable by the Minutemen. The Warlord is the liaison between the Trust and the Minutemen. He facilitates communication between the two groups while being loyal to both. He's also responsible for training any Minutemen prospects and selecting his replacement. Finally, the Warlord delivers orders to the Minutemen from the Trust and, presumably, alerts the Minutemen when one Trust member makes a move against another. The Minutemen are 7 highly trained, lethal enforcers for the Trust. This is their primary duty. If there is a threat to the Trust's power, the Minutemen ensure that threat is dealt with. They have no need to be subtle when carrying out their orders. Like the Trust itself, the Minutemen are above the law and untouchable. As mentioned a moment ago, the Minutemen have the authority to hold members of the Trust accountable for their actions. That is, if one member of the Trust makes a move against another, the Minutemen step in and remove the offending Trust member. They ensure there is peace between the various Trust families. Within this conspiracy is another hidden conspiracy. This hidden conspiracy exists between 2 members of the Trust and the Minuteman, Agent Graves. It's a slow-building plot that takes decades to evolve and take shape. The end goal is to dissolve the Trust and consolidate its power and control under fewer or one house. In actuality, this is what the series is about. It's not about a tough, grizzled man randomly handing out deadly briefcases to strangers. It's about that man concluding a chapter of American tradition and undermining the foundation that established the country. His goal is to move that power in another direction, one where he has a significant influence. It's a bold, dangerous move, one with grave consequences and a body count. Stylistically, 100 Bullets is a neo-noir crime thriller. Thematically, it examines how trust dissolves in the presence of total power, wealth, and ambition. Traditional values, or alliances that have worked for centuries, are put aside for personal gain. Who can you trust when you know everyone around you has an agenda and they're making moves in secret to benefit themselves? One thing you can trust is your weapon. If you have the right gun, loaded with the right bullets, you can resolve your issues and face no consequences. Ultimately, the best weapon, the one that is always reliable, is a motivated individual. Facilitate their need, put that person in a state of desperation, and then give them the opportunity to take control of a situation with violence. At the same time, if one is motivated into action, one has to wonder if they're serving a part of someone else's agenda. Who secretly benefits along with you? Have you been manipulated? If so, to what end? Those with a conscience can't help but to feel paranoid. Those without one just become more cynical and self-serving. The series is notable for phonetically representing regional dialects and manners of speech. It's a technique that tends to lend credibility or authenticity to the dialogue. At points, it can get a bit distracting, but for the most part, it is well managed. There are a few stylistic quirks that are noticeable. One quirk is dialogue bleeding over into another scene. This serves as a transition from one scene to another, and it's a shorthand method to set the tone or direction of the following scene. At times, it feels somewhat forced. It does make an issue flow together, but it's not always seamless or organic. Another quirk is the A story being two main characters having a conversation, while the B story is throwaway characters acting out a scene that complements the A story conversation. What is interesting is the subtext. It suggests that the grand plots of the main characters are being mirrored on a small scale by unknown temporary players. Furthermore, there is an effect the main characters have that they do not notice or care about. This illustrates how pathological the main characters are. They don't care about the ripple effect of their actions, even when it occurs right in front of them. The small scale is unimportant. It is meaningless. During the counterfeit detective story, the writing does teeter into self-parody territory. Obviously, it's about a character common to crime stories, the hard-drinking, tough-talking detective. Unfortunately, these characteristics are way over the top. That is, it's hard to discern whether this is a mean-spirited writer mocking detective fiction, or a writer leaning into the genre with the intent of being satirical, but going too far and becoming a parody instead. This isn't to suggest it's a terrible story, but the tone is noticeably different than the rest of the series. Otherwise, 100 Bullets is rather consistent. In the end, despite being 100 issues long, the series doesn't contain a lot of filler. It's only early on, before it was successful and established, that there are side stories that don't pertain to the emerging plot. Certainly, there are stories that could have been more concise, and, objectively, the series didn't need to be 100 issues long, but that length provides a certain, satisfying symmetry.